honey, I washing. For you, every fairy tale reaches this moment. The chapter no one advertises. The one where love is no longer new and therefore no longer protected by novelty. This is where the world clears its throat and says, "Are you sure?" It happens quietly at first. A tired day, a misunderstood word, a silence that lasts a heartbeat too long. Nothing dramatic, because real trials rarely announce themselves. They arrive disguised as normal life. The world resumed its old habits. Time reclaimed its sharp edges. Responsibilities knocked without apology. And suddenly, love was no longer floating, it was standing, bearing weight. I saw then what kind of magic you carried, not the kind that dazzles crowds, but the kind that stays. When enchantment stops being easy, you did not retreat into myth. You did not demand perfection to preserve the illusion. You stayed human, and that was braver than any spell, because it's easy to love someone when the path is lit and short. It's harder to love when the road bends into uncertainty, and still say, "I'm walking this with you." The world tested us in whispers. It asked if patience had limits, if tenderness could survive exhaustion, if devotion would still speak when excitement fell asleep. And I watched you answer, not with speeches, but with consistency, with showing up, with choosing kindness, even when misunderstanding stood between us like fog. You listened when it would have been easier to defend. You held space when it would have been tempting to withdraw. You reminded me, not with force, but with presence, that love is not proven by intensity, but by endurance. I learned something crucial in that season. Fairy tales don't fall apart when trouble appears. They reveal their truth. This was the chapter where I stopped loving you accidentally and started loving you intentionally, where affection matured into allegiance, because devotion is not blind. It sees clearly and chooses anyway. I saw your flaws, you saw mine, and neither of us used them as an exit. Instead, we used them as instructions: how to care better, how to speak softer, how to grow instead of win. That is not fantasy, that is craftsmanship. We were no longer characters being carried by a story. We were authors, now writing patience into the margins, editing pride out of our sentences, rewriting endings when old habits tried to sneak back in. And still, even in the mess of becoming, you remained my princess, not elevated above reality, but rooted within it. A princess who could sit with discomfort without losing grace, who could be strong without becoming hard, who could ask for love without apologizing for needing it. That is royal behavior. That is power, refined. So when the world leaned in closer and waited for the magic to fail, it didn't. You didn't arrive to be admired from a distance. You arrived to alter the atmosphere. Before you, my days obeyed habit. After you, they answered to feeling. You taught the light new ways to enter a room. Morning learned your name and pronounced it gently. I began to notice how the world responded to you, how rooms felt warmer after your laughter, how silence softened when you occupied it, how even absence carried your shape. You were never loud about your power. That was the most dangerous thing. You didn't conquer, you claimed not land, but moments, not attention, but devotion. You ruled without demanding allegiance, and somehow everything bowed anyway. That's when I understood. A princess is not crowned by gold, she is crowned by impact. By the way, hearts rearrange themselves in her presence. By the way, broken things stop pretending they are unbreakable and finally ask to be healed. You walked into my life, and my defenses mistook you for safety. They opened the gates before my fear could object. And once you were inside, nothing wanted to remain the same. I found myself wanting, not recklessly, but deliberately, wanting to be better, not to impress you, but to honor the way you believed in me without being asked to. You spoke my name like it wasn't temporary, like it belonged in the future tense. That alone rewrote something ancient inside me because I had lived too long, treating love like a season, beautiful but destined to end. You treated it like a home, a place worth maintaining, worth protecting, worth growing old inside. And suddenly, effort felt romantic, sacrifice felt purposeful, commitment stopped sounding like a loss and started sounding like a gift. Do you know what it's like to feel chosen without being tested? First, to feel worthy without being perfected. That is the miracle you performed without ever calling it magic. You didn't rescue me from a tower. You sat beside me while I learned how to build one, not to hide, but to see farther. And in doing so, you became more than a dream. You became a direction. My life began organizing itself around you, not because you demanded space, but because you gave meaning to it.